Hello everyone, we're here today to go over how to mix your colors for your complementary color wheel. I just want to talk a little bit about your materials and what you're going to need. You'll need to have definitely some paper towel or a rag to remove all of the moisture, right? You do not want any of your water to be mixing with your paints. This will turn it transparent, okay? So the water is just to clean your brushes and to prime the bristles. You're not going to be using your white or your black for the color wheel. They are only going to be used for the grayscale swatches. So leave those to the side. You're not going to touch those. These are the only three paints that we're going to be using to mix the full color wheel. And you're going to be painting everything onto your Bristol paper. And these are the measurements, right? Our color wheel swatches are measuring 1 inch by 2 3/4, and our value scale and our complementary color swatches are both measuring at 1 inch. So generally estimating, you want to go beyond those so that you can cut out those swatches. So you want to paint swatches that are slightly bigger than that, okay? You're going to paint 3 primary, 3 secondary, and 6 tertiary, yeah? So let's get started. Primary is really easy, just straight from the tube. Okay, notice that I will be drying out my brush each time I rinse. That's really important. Otherwise, you're going to deal with opacity issues, meaning the white of the paper is going to come through quite a bit. Okay, so I'm going to start here with my yellow. Working from the lightest color first is always a good idea. And this is going to be true when you start to mix. Now keep in mind, we want a swatch that measures 1 inch by 2 3/8 at the top, so we'll make the whole thing that wide. Okay, come back for a little more. So I'm going to make sure that each time I bring my paint back to my Bristol paper, I'm able to get full coverage. Okay, I'm going to do a little more rinsing. Now I'm just going to do a little slight drag off the top without drying, because it did feel that this was really coming off my brush and creating quite a bit of dry brushing. Okay, see how you can see the color of the paper through that just a little bit still? So I'm going to come to this one more time, and now anytime I've gone in one direction on my first coat, it's went this way. The next coat, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. That's called hatching, okay? So you're going to want to do a little bit of hatching and go in the opposite direction the second time. And then you will have nice, solid coverage. Okay, I'm going to try to make sure my swatch is exactly as big as we need it to be. Okay, great. So one primary swatch is finished. I'm going to continue, and I want to just show you a little bit about color mixing, okay? As soon as we get our primaries done. So again, just a slight drag off the top of your brush so that it still has a little bit of moisture to it. Now this magenta that we're using is standing in as our red because it is needed in order to mix. This is the standard colors that we use in printing, is CMYK, cyan, magenta. K stands for black, but cyan, magenta, yellow, yeah. Y, yellow, K is black. And it's with these 3 colors that all of the printing that we see out in the printed world is done. So in order to mix these colors well. So what I'd like to zoom in and show you all, do you see how the white of the paper is coming through right there just a little bit? So that's why I would want to take a second coat, okay? And that's what's great about this gouache, is that it will get nice and opaque and solid, but you have to maybe do a coat or 2. So I'm going to come back, get a little more paint, and do a second coat. Remember, going in the opposite direction, yeah? I had gone vertically the last time, so now I'm going to go horizontally. And hopefully that should cover right over any areas where the paper is showing through. Okay? Great. Gonna let that dry and move on. You may need to clear your water out. You don't want to be mixing with dirty water, so at certain points you might want to change your water. I'm going to come into blue. There's a little bit of droplet of water. Let's see if that could, it's going to affect things too much. Yeah, okay, this is a good learning. Okay, so I want to show you all something. This is coming off my brush really nicely, right? It easily goes across the surface of the paper because of my water to paint ratio is a little more water than I've used with my other two, right? Notice the difference where you can really see the brush strokes and the white of the paper. That means I have quite a bit of water on my brush or in my mixture, and I'm definitely going to have to do a second coat, yeah? So it really is about finding that right balance of water to paint. You do not want too much water. You want just enough for it to glide off the brush. And then we're going to let that swatch partially dry before I come back with a crosshatch. Okay? And our primary swatches. We're going to now talk a little bit more about mixing. Okay? While that dries. Now, as we mix our primary and secondary colors, you always want to start with the lightest first. So that means yellow is our lightest color, right, out of our primaries. So yellow will always be the first that we start with when we're mixing anything with it, right, because it is the least dominant, right? These are dominant colors. They will override the yellow automatically. So see this water? This is why we might want to have clean water, yeah, before we start having a couple of options of cups. So maybe like a rinse, a dirty water and a clean water is a good idea. All right, I'm going to come back one more time and go in the opposite direction. Great. And if needed, I might need to come back one more time so that I have full opacity and I'm not seeing brush stroke marks, yeah? Yeah, the brushstroke marks are kind of coming through quite a bit, and I think that has to do with my amount of water that was on my brush, yeah? So, but it can always be fixed by another coat, okay? So just come back and hit it later with less water on your brush. I'm going to move on to mixing our secondary colors. Let's see, hopefully this water mixture that I have will not affect things. I'm going to go with our yellow-orange first, or I mean our orange, sorry. We're going to go with orange. So orange starts, remember these are not 50-50. 50-50 orange and red doesn't make, yellow and cyan does not make red. I'm saying everything wrong, y'all, because I'm recording and I know it matters. It's red and magenta we're mixing here. So we have yellow. We're going to start off our base with yellow. I want you to rinse your brush. And come grab the smallest amount of red. You will see that this red will be so dominant, right, that it will affect that small amount of yellow. Here we go. Wonderful. Good. Our goal is to hit a middle orange, right? A true orange. This is coming in at a little closer to a yellow-orange. So I'm going to add a little bit more magenta. You saw how small it was that I added the first time, so this time it's going to be almost the same amount. Hopefully that'll push us into a true orange and not over into a red-orange. There we go. That feels like a fairly true orange. Hopefully I have enough of it to create a swatch big enough. Yeah. Let's test it out and see. Yeah, that looks like a nice true orange. And now I will work to make sure I have enough of it. So now you need to kind of match your color. Can you get back to that same color? Again, is the question. That was not enough. You see how I'm really stretching it to cover this swatch? So we'll see. I probably have to mix quite a bit more. I will try to get everything I can out of that. anymore. Okay, so I'm going to rinse out. Bring in some more yellow. And mixing a large amount of orange is a good idea because you're going to need it for your yellow orange and your red orange. So it's okay to make more than you think you'll need for your one swatch, because you actually have swatches down here. You have yellow orange and red orange. So I'm going to need to use a large amount of true orange in order to mix those two tertiary colors. Okay, so we have enough yellow. And notice that I'm kind of consistently swirling my brush, trying to bring all of my paint back to the center so it doesn't get too far away from me. Now, the ratio was definitely not half and half. It was more, I would say, majority yellow with the smallest amount of magenta. I'd say it's maybe even 4 parts yellow, 1 part red or magenta. And now that looks, the challenge is you do not want to go too dark because you'll end up using all of your yellow to bring it back. You definitely don't want to start with magenta when you're mixing red, when you're mixing orange. Yeah? Otherwise you will get nowhere and have a whole bunch of wasted paint. So remember, always mix with your lightest color first, and you slowly add your darker color to it. So this is looking like a nice true orange, not too yellow, not too red. I'm going to finish painting my first swatch here. Okay, I'm coming back a little more. Yeah, 2 3/4. Now that I'm looking at it, might be a lot bigger. I don't have my ruler with me, y'all, so your swatches might take up a little more space in order to hit that 2 3/4. Great, I'm going to give it a time to dry, and I'll come back with another coat. So there might be multiple times where you're going to do layers of paint application. You just don't want it to get too thick because gouache will reactivate whatever's underneath it, and sometimes it will start to crack. But this is why I like the acrylic gouache. So hopefully you purchase the right, the right kind. Okay, so now we will be working with green. Yeah, let's mix our secondary colors and then we'll move on to our tertiaries. Yeah, so with green we're going to need more yellow, definitely. Okay. Again, we're going to start with our lighter color first. So I'm going to bring out some yellow. In order to not contaminate my blue, I'm going to rinse before I go there. Grab a little bit of blue, and we're going to see how much, maybe 4 parts yellow to 1 part blue is mixing. Great, and that's getting us to a yellow-green, which is good. That's one of our secondary colors, right? So now you know 4 parts yellow, 1 part blue will give you to your yellow-green. But we need a true green, so we're going to add a little bit more blue. Come back. Ooh, that might have been too much. We'll see. Nope, that put us right there. I think that looks pretty good. Might even be able to go a little more, but let's see how it looks on paper. A lot of times it appears darker on paper than it does on your palette. Remember, palette-wise, I had mentioned that gouache is absorbent, so don't use plastic. So I have a metal tray here, or you can work on a glass dish. Just grab anything from your kitchen, it's fine. You don't need anything fancy. And it washes off, so nobody will be upset. Okay, so making sure that we're able to hit these secondary colors and then see the subtle differences between your secondaries and your tertiaries, right? Knowing that you can push color towards its neighbors on the wheel. You know, that's our whole goal, is to be able to intentionally mix towards every color that's there. Oops, I grabbed a little too much water, and you can see that it's kind of almost lifting. Bummer. I was trying to kind of lengthen the amount of paint I had here. Because again, remember, I'm going to need a lot of green, so I'll be remixing that in order to mix my tertiaries, because I have blue-green and yellow-green to mix. Yeah? So you're going to need to mix a lot of your secondary colors eventually. Maybe the first time out you don't, but you'll need to be able to mix it again to get back to it. Okay, I'm going to move on to magenta and let that dry. Good, so now when I was saying go from lighter values to darkers, which do you do first? These are kind of similar in value, yeah? So I'm going to pull from our blue first. You can experiment, you can see what happens when you pull. That had a little bit of yellow in it, so I'm going to see, hopefully that's not going to push our magenta or our purple into a weird place. And you can see that on my palette here, there's a little bit of yellow because I was sloppy in mixing. Look at that. So I'm not going to pull from here, right? That will only be a place that I want to use when I'm mixing oranges. So I'm going to pull from down over here. So I'm not using any contaminated, that's the wrong word. Any tainted? I don't know. Any paint that's not pure. Great, and this is a really good example of how this color kind of really quickly comes to life. And blue and cyan is cyan is the color blue that we're working from. The magenta, you're pretty much mixing equal parts. I'd say this is blue purple now, so I need to add a bit more to get to that equal. There we go. And this mixing purple with these particular colors is really satisfying because it works. If you use another red, another parent colors for this, it often does not. Okay, this is a good purple. Great. I'm going to take a break and clear my water before we mix our tertiaries. Yes? And that way we have clean water to work from. I can take and edit this a little bit. Great, so we have primaries and secondaries, yeah? And we will come back and work on our tertiaries because this is not clean water to work with.